Okay, remember that they are changing my voice. So recently there was a mass shooting in Livonia, Michigan, which is 15 minutes away from here. And it was either yesterday or the day before. There's a lot going on, so sometimes I get a little confused about these minor details. That there was a shooting at Kaiser Hospital where I used to work in San Jose, and I said that these shootings revolve around me. I said, they're centered. The center of it is me. The next mass shooting in America that gets a lot of news time, at least, right, because of the nature of it, is 15 minutes away from where I live across the country in Michigan. I live in Southfield, which is by Detroit, and Livonia is fairly by Detroit as well, about 15 minutes away from here. And I brought up the wordplay. And Livonia starts with live. Okay, it starts with the part of the word live. And of course, people have been dying. I brought up AI, and Livonia ends with IA backwards. It's AI. So live on artificial intelligence. And I've been saying that this is part of a massive series of events that are connected. Now, who I am is a very complex thing. It's a very controversial thing. I'm tempted to leave it out of this video because I want you people to know that I'm telling the truth. And if I tell you who I am, you're going to start thinking that I have, something I don't, which is, delusions of grandeur or something like this, right? Which is not the case. But I can tell you that I'm the son of 2 doctors. My father's a brain surgeon, and I've made 19,000 videos in the last 17 years. In part 2, I'm going to tell you who I am beyond that, but I want to try to get as many views in this part as I can. Okay, so there was also another event recently in Livonia where somebody named Manuel, right? Another word for Jesus is Emmanuel. His name was Manuel Badakhshan or something like that. I have to rush to make this video. And he was in a hazmat suit. There was also an event where there was a mother who was arrested in a different place who tried to kill herself and her kids specifically with a monoxide poisoning. With carbon monoxide, the old car in the garage or something to that effect, right? With monoxide. Now, I brought up the fuming. Okay, I bring up all the time that I'm fumed and poisoned. I have another channel called Covertly Drugged. Okay, another one called Fumed. And I'm going to tell you the rest of it in the next video again because it reveals who I am. And so on. So I've been talking about this for years. I have thousands of videos where I bring up the fact that they're fuming and poisoning me. If I'm not mistaken here. At least hundreds of them. So that's a key part in this here. Okay, so what are the odds that these things are connected? Also, recently there was a cross burned in Chicago, or the Chicago area. Because I have a lot to do. I'm studying the Bible. I'm trying to keep up with these messages that they're sending me. And the Klan historically sends messages specifically, first and foremost, to black people. And I'm not a racist, right? Not a racial supremacist. But they send messages with threats, like the burned cross, maybe graffiti, things like this, right? Now the people behind this, they're not the Klan. They're not the average Jew or the average white person so much, but the whole nation is complicit to varying degrees, right? Revelation 18 says, come out of her so you won't share in her sins. So first I put God first, right? Justice must come before everything else. God first. See, in Isaiah 16:5 it says that Christ seeks and speeds the cause of righteousness and justice. But I'm also very concerned with freedom. I'm very concerned with the absence of freedom. Americans are in a sort of psychological prison right now, where they have the ability to organize and to demand their freedom in a logical economy with straightforward points and ideas. They have the power to do so, but they're not doing it. Let me give you an example here. The rich avoid paying $163 billion in taxes every year, then they got the big, beautiful bill on top of that. And if that's so sustainable, it's not such a big deal. Why don't they cut a check for $10 billion more for law enforcement? Or, spend $400 billion on affordable housing. Why? Because they'll get the money back. So they're not doing things like this that would help us get our freedom. If you're a Republican, you're probably hurting in terms of, the housing and the cost of living, right? If you're a Democrat, same thing. So both parties seem to agree that we need to build more housing. They don't seem to want to admit to themselves it's a simple matter of the government cutting the check. Like when Biden passed his infrastructure plan, it was over $1 trillion. It's like 3 times more than it would cost to build 4 million units of affordable housing. And in his plan, the government doesn't get any money back. With the affordable housing plan, they pay rent. And there's tax revenue and there's jobs. It's open and shut. So why don't they do that? They have no problem spending all the money on Iran. And I don't want to get into these issues. I'm not a politician. I'm concerned with social issues. But first and foremost, I'm concerned with people obeying God. If God wanted to wipe out the human race, for example, I'd have no problem with that. I'd still stay loyal to God. I'm loyal to God no matter what. But that happens to involve being very concerned with justice and freedom. And we see that they're trying to turn us against each other. Why would somebody burn a cross in Chicago? Because they want to make people who are already very angry more angry. All those gangs in Chicago. Chicago's full of gangs. It might very well be the place that has the most gangs of any place in America. Just tons of gangs. Like Los Angeles, tons of gangs. Detroit, lots of gangs. So why did they do that there? Why not in some small town? Why in Chicago? Because they're trying to divide us. But the only thing worse than division is people uniting for the wrong thing. You have to be very careful about what you unite for. To make sure that it's just and that you're spreading freedom and that you understand that righteousness is greater than wealth or being a tribalist. Okay, you should be more concerned with your family being righteous than trying to put your race above another race or trying to get revenge on another race. You should be concerned with righteousness and justice. So while this is playing out, ask yourself what's happening to your freedoms. With all these teen takeovers and they're coming out with technology to address them, are they also coming out with technology to address the conflict in Sudan and Ukraine and Russia, in Lebanon and Palestine and Iran and Nigeria? What is their plan? Just be very careful that you don't play into their hand and find yourself hooked to some kind of data center driven technology, brain hacking, artificial intelligence. You must be very careful here. You must organize as uncontrolled opposition, but extremely organized opposition. By uncontrolled, I mean not controlled by the state. See, if you love each other, you're going to know that you must do these things already. And all these people with fancy degrees in economics and, sociology and psychology, all these people from different walks of life, all these people who work for the government, rich and poor alike, who work with the government, they would already be doing the solution. I urge you all to look at what's going on very carefully here, to consider my videos. Please subscribe to my channel. If you're afraid to do that, at least talk about these ideas with your friends and your family. Okay, when they tell you, say if you work for the government, they tell you that you're not allowed to talk about things that affect your life in this way, right? Your constitutional rights, your freedom, whether or not the community is at risk of mass mind control far more than we've ever seen before. Part of the solution to this is having more oversight, citizen oversight, corporate oversight, law enforcement, FBI oversight for the money that is used in government programs, for the transfer of funds, for the application of funds. That's part of the answer here. More oversight by far, 10 times more than we've ever seen before. $1 billion in new oversight plus citizen committees that volunteer their time. As many people are concerned about these things. And if they want to help their family, they want to help their offspring, they want to help their neighbors and their country, and they're retired and they're concerned, they can volunteer some of their time. Just a little bit of their time, once a week, twice a week, every day, whatever makes sense to them, to take part in an oversight process to make sure the money goes where it's supposed to. And I also insist that they raise the penalty for fraud when it comes to government programs. People should be very afraid to mismanage money that's supposed to go to the children, to feed kids, to house the homeless, to build rehabs. I have lots of plans I want to discuss with you, and I don't have all the answers. But part of the answer is that we discuss these things. And we understand the problem is structural. The word conversation begins with con. The word consent begins with con. Are you really consenting or are you being conned? Are you really having an effective, detailed, and in-depth conversation like the president said? Or are you just being conned? I urge you all to think about these things carefully. Even if you reject the wordplay, even if you reject that these events are connected, at least consider the economy and the oversight plan that I've presented here.